Yes. So welcome everyone to today's webinar on the yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. If you haven't yet, please share with us where you're zooming in from. Sam from Naperville, thank you for joining. I am Ankur Patel, Director of Outreach of HUA, joining from Los Angeles. Surya from Nepal, glad to have you on. And we have our wonderful faculty, Dr. Shriram Sorvatam, joining from San Francisco. So today's webinar is on the yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. This is an amazing subject. It's so deep. But the question we're going to start with is, can deep meditation and dynamic activity coexist in the same person? Or are some people meditative by nature while others are driven to action? Are we constrained by our own past karmas to move in one direction or the other? Or can they be integrated? One of the unique contributions of the Bhagavad Gita is the synthesis of nivritti marga, path of contemplation, and pravritti marga, path of dynamic activity, through yoga. So in this webinar, we're going to introduce you all, the attendees, to a structured journey of exploration of the world of yoga as enunciated in the Bhagavad Gita by Bhagavan Krishna. We'll also compare Bhagavan Krishna's exposition with the teachings of Patanjali's teachings in the Yoga Sutras. So that's kind of the background of how we're going to look at the yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. We have quite a few more people joining us. Candice from New York City. Thank you for joining. Jenny from New Jersey. Vijay Kane, Friends of HUA, Houston Sugarland area. Thank you for joining. Justin from Krakow, Poland. Wonderful. Glad to have you here. Anku, is that just Anku from Magwana from Jaipur, India? Glad to have all of you on. And with that, let me introduce our guest, our faculty, Dr. Shriram Sorvatam, who is going to lead us in today's webinar. He has been an ardent practitioner of yoga since childhood. He's got a PhD. He's got his ERYT 500 yoga certification. And he was initiated into yoga by his teacher, Yogacharya Subramanianji from Chennai, India. He studied with him for 14 years. Shriramji has been teaching yoga since 1991 in India. He's taught over 300 yoga workshops and retreats all over the USA. He's been teaching retreats with HUA at our Pine Lake campus. We're going to be doing more of those in this next year. His workshops offer a holistic experience of yoga and blend wisdom from classic yoga texts, including Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, and other texts. His students are led to discover the core principles of yoga contained in the classic yoga text, which in turn profoundly elevates the quality of their yoga practice. And Dr. Shriramji is known for this. His yoga practice is one of the best. You learn how to do it. You learn how to do it well. You feel better in all the different ways that we know. He's been on many prestigious conferences, the Yoga Alliance Leadership Conference, Texas Yoga Conference, the Texas Medical Conference, and he's a founding member of Ekashri Schools of Yoga and is also a faculty member of the teacher training program of Yoga Bharati. So with that, Shriramji, it's always a pleasure to have you on an HUA webinar. And again, you're teaching this Yoga, the Bhagavad Gita class. It's amazing to have you. And let me hand it to you to guide us through this this webinar today and share with us what you have planned for today. Shriramji?
Thank you. Dhanyavadaha. Thank you, Ankurji. And thank you all for joining this webinar. We are going to embark on a beautiful journey into the yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. Allow me to begin the session with a short dhyana shloka, an invocation chant on Bhagavad Gita. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavatim अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वाम् अनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी. So when we talk of the Bhagavad Gita, we can think of the Bhagavad Gita in different ways, from different vantage points. So they say that Bhagavad Gita is an Upanishad. It is also a Brahma Vidya. It expounds knowledge on the highest knowledge about the Brahman, Brihatvat Brahman, the highest wisdom. And it is also a Yoga Shastra. It is a scriptural text on the practice and wisdom of yoga. So if you are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita chanting, at the end of each chapter, we say, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Asu Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre. So Bhagavad Gita as a Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita as a Brahma Vidya, and Bhagavad Gita as a Yoga Shastra. So in this hour of presentation and in the course that we're going to offer in the winter quarter, we're going to don the hat of a yogi, and we are going to learn from Bhagavad Gita about the discipline of yoga and the wisdom of yoga. So when we say Yoga Shastra, the word Shastra is derived from the word Shasanam. Shasanam means a set of rules or set of disciplines to take us to where we want to go, to be a happy person, to have the heart that is filled with devotion, love, and to have a mind that is stable, sthita pragya, stability in the mind, not an agitated or turbulent mind, but a tranquil mind. So in order to achieve this objective, what are some of the methods or disciplines, practices? So Bhagavad Gita gives a variety of practices and also sheds light on what is yoga, the wisdom of yoga, and so forth. So that's what we are going to explore in the next hour. So allow me to share the slides here. Ankurji, looks like I don't have permission to share the slides. Can you?
Really? Make you a co-host. Go different settings.
Yes, I can see it now.
Let me just share the poll. So we have a few first timers, quite a few regulars, people who've attended before, and quite a few students. HOA students, 19 people have taken course before, 5 enrolled in programs. 13 are considering. Glad that you're here to consider enrolling. And for the 10 of you who are not interested in any classes, please enjoy the webinar and support HUA in whatever way you can. This is our university, and you don't just have to take courses to be a part of it. Shiramji?
Okay. So let's begin by asking ourselves, what is yoga? So when we hear the word yoga, we have different images or different ideas that come up in the mind. Let us look into the dictionary definition of yoga. And by dictionary, so in Sanskrit, we refer to the Dhatu Patha of the great sage Panini. So Dhatu Patha is a collection of verb roots, dhatus, about 2000 of them. And in order to find out the root meaning, the core meaning of any word, we fall back into this dictionary definition contained in Dhatu Patha. So when we refer to the Dhatu Patha, we see three separate or three different occurrences of the root word of yoga. The root word of yoga is yuj, yuj, and it is defined in three places in the Dhatu Patha, and therefore we can say there are three different meanings of the word yoga. Or some say that it is the same meaning, but we are looking at three different facets of the same root word, the same meaning of yuj. The first meaning that is given is yujur yogi. Yoga is to unite, to join, to unite. And perhaps this is the most popular understanding of yoga. Yoga is to unite, perhaps unite the mind and the body. For example, the body could be in a classroom listening to a lecture, but if the mind is thinking about lunch, then the mind and the body are not in yoga. You see, they are divided. Mind and the body are divided. But if the mind and the body, they are together in one place, then they are in a state of yoga. So yujir yogi. The second definition that we see in the Dhatu Pata is yuja samadhav. Yoga is samadhi. So to promote mental equilibrium, equipoise or samatvam in the mind. Samadhi, sama means same. So when the mind is stable, it is not agitated, jumping up and down, but it is stable. To quote my yoga teacher, he used to say, transform a yo-yo mind to a yoga mind. So if the mind is jumping up and down like a yo-yo, that means the mind is agitated. It is depleting our energy in the system. Whereas a mind that is centered, balanced, quiet, calm, we are conserving energy. We are not depleting energy. So that state of mind is yoga. So yoga is samadhi. You just samadhav. And the third definition that we see in the dictionary, Dhatu Pata, is yuja samyamane. Yoga is samyama. The literal meaning of the word samyama is complete control. Yama means control. In fact, yama is the first limb of the Ashtanga Yoga that is described in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Samyama means complete control. So full control of the mind. And it is said in the Yoga Sutras that if there is samyama in the mind, complete control in the mind, then we are able to tap into the extraordinary powers of the mind, siddhis. We can unlock the inner potential, the siddhis in the mind by samyama. So yuja samyamane, blossoming of the mind to its full potential is yoga. So complete control of the mind, where the mind is able to express itself in full form, in its full potential. That is yoga. So we see these three definitions given in the Dhatu Pata. So when we read these definitions, one of the first ideas that come to mind is that perhaps yoga is a introspective practice. Yoga is for the mind. It is an introspective practice where we sit down, perhaps in a yoga mat, close our eyes and go deep in contemplation, meditation to quiet the monkey mind. And some of the yoga shastras, such as Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, some of the Upanishads, and classic yoga scriptures like Yoga Yajnavalkya, given by the great sage Yajnavalkya, and Yoga Vasishtha, they give similar definitions. For example, in the Yoga Sutras, one of the famous definitions of yoga that Patanjali gives, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So quieting the activities of the chitta, the mind, restraining the activities of the mind is yoga. So transforming a turbulent mind to a tranquil mind is yoga. And in the Kathopanishad, it is said that stability and control of the senses. So tam yoga miti manyate sthiram indriya dharanam. So indriyas, when the sensory control is achieved, this state is called yoga. And sage Yajnavalkya, he aligns with the first definition that we saw in the Dhatu Pata. Yoga as union. He says, Samyoga yoga uchyate jivatma paramatmanoho. It is the union of the individual self with the Paramatma, the Jiva with the Paramatma. So union of the individual self with, we can say, the cosmic self. That's how Yajnavalkya defines the word yoga. And then in the Yoga Vasishtha, it is described as mana prashamana upayaha. That means the methods or the means that we use in order to quiet the mind, in order to bring the mind to a place of silence and tranquility. Again, one of the themes that we see here is that perhaps yoga is an introspective practice. So when we come to the Bhagavad Gita, one of the unique features that we see in the Bhagavad Gita is that it is not opposed to dynamic activity. Yoga can be achieved even in the midst of living in the world with the eyes open. In other words, we don't have to sit in a yoga mat and meditate for 24 hours, but we can achieve the state of yoga in dynamic activity as well. So whether we are an introvert or an extrovert, nivritti or pravritti, yoga can be practiced. So we see various definitions of yoga in the Bhagavad Gita. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Yoga is equilibrium of the mind, or samadhi. This we saw before in the Dhatu Pata as well. And then samadha vachala buddhihi. So when the buddhi or the intellect is in a place of samadhi. And then dukkha samyoga viyogam. Here yoga is defined as viyoga, disunion. Disunion from misery. And I would like to highlight this, the second definition that you see here on the slide, relating yoga in the field of action or activity. So this is something unique about Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavan Krishna says, yoga karmasu kaushalam. You can be in the midst of activity. You can be engaged in karma and you can still be in yoga. How can we do that? So yoga is excellence in action or dexterity in action or skill in action. And we're going to explore this idea a little bit more in the next few slides. So one of the salient features of Bhagavad Gita is that yoga can be achieved even while living actively engaged in this world. So yoga is not opposed to action. In fact, most of the very famous verses of the Bhagavad Gita are in the context of karma and karma yoga. So some of the famous verses that are oft quoted are from the karma yoga, and especially the Bhagavad Gita sheds light on the disciplines that are involved in karma yoga, and we're going to see a few of them in the next few slides. So various definitions of yoga we see, and also there is another definition that is that we see. For example, in one of the famous verses of the Bhagavad Gita, Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana paryupasate tesha nityabhiyuktanam yoga kshemam vahamyaham. So Shankara, in his commentary of this verse, he says yoga, the definition of yoga in this verse is yoga apraptasya prapadam. That means obtaining something which is extraordinary. It is not through our individual effort that we can make it happen, but there is some divine grace. There is some blessing that comes and gives us something which is extraordinary, a benefit that is extraordinary. That is also called yoga. Extraordinary benefit. Another definition of yoga. Okay. Now let us go back to this idea of pravritti and nivritti. So Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, he defines yoga as a nivritti marga, chitta vritti nirodha. So the vrittis are restrained or silenced. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, in one of the verses in the 18th chapter, Krishna says, pravrittim cha nivrittim cha karya karye bhaya bhaye bandham moksham cha ya veti buddhissa partha satviki. A sattvic buddhi, a clear intellect, knows when to be in pravritti and when to be in nivritti. When should I meditate or when should I relax? And when should I be engaged in activity? When should I be dynamic in action? So both of these are important in our lives. There are times when we have to actively put effort in our action. And there are times when we need to relax. There are things that we gain only through relaxation. For example, if we want to fall asleep, we cannot achieve that through action. All we can do is to simply let go, relax, and wait. And we allow sleep to happen into our experience. So the key word here is to allow. So in the Nivritti path, the key word is allow, the art of allowing. Whereas in the Pravritti Marga, there are some activities where we have to go and put effort in order to gain something. For example, if a tiger has to find its food, find its prey, it cannot remain idle with the mouth open, waiting for the prey to fall into its mouth. It's not going to happen. The tiger has to go and put effort to find its lunch. So pravritti is needed. Putting effort in our actions is also part of our experience. So pravritti, when to be engaged in dynamic action and when to be engaged in introspection or contemplation. This difference is very important. And the ability to discern when should I be in activity versus when should I be in relaxation is the sattvic buddhi, the clear intellect. In fact, Bhagavad Gita also says that they are not opposites of each other. They complement each other. They complement each other. In fact, they both can happen concurrently. One can be engaged in dynamic activity, yet in the inner world, there is tranquility. You see, inner peace combining with dynamic activity. One of my teachers, Sri Ravi Shankarji, so he gives a very beautiful acronym, IPOD, IPOD, which stands for inner peace and outwardly dynamic. Inner peace and outwardly dynamic. And there is a very beautiful practice around this principle where inner peace and dynamic activity can happen concurrently in the same moment. And this practice is given in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So this practice is called Karmani Akarma Darshanam. And there is also a complementary practice in the same verse is described, Akarmani Karma Darshanam. So let me chant this verse and then we will look at the meaning. Karmanya karmaya pashyet akarmani cha karmaya sabuddhiman manushyeshu sayukta kritsna karma krit. So here Bhagavan Krishna says, those who see silence in activity, that is karmani akarmaya pashyet, those who see silence in activity, and those who see activity in silence. And we will see what exactly that means. So those who see silence in activity and activity in silence are truly the wise among humans. So although performing all kinds of actions, they are yogis and masters of their actions. Because even in the midst of dynamic activity, they are tranquil inside. They are at peace inside. So they don't get exhausted. They can keep being active in life and yet they are relaxed. They don't get exhausted or depleted of energy. And we see such people in the world, especially those who are passionate about what they are doing, those who uh, have a drive to do what they want, and they're aligned with the inspiration that comes from within. So when we are in that state where we are inspired in our action, there is inner peace and there is outward dynamism. So what does it mean? Seeing silence in activity. That means when the body and the mind are engaged in action, yet we are in a place of silence or stable state within. We are in a place of tranquility within. And one example we can think of is, think of a washing machine. So washing machine is spinning very, very fast. Yet the center of gravity of the washing machine has to be stably anchored to the ground. So if it is not stably anchored, then the whole washing machine will be wobbling, and you are hoping that it doesn't spin very fast and create chaos in the whole and create a big mess. So in order for the washing machine to spin very fast, it is very important to keep the center of gravity of the washing machine stably anchored to the ground. So here we see the stable anchor and the dynamic activity go hand in hand. And this is exactly what silence, seeing silence in activity is. The more dynamic we want to be in our life, then the more anchored we need to be in our center. You see? So that is seeing silence in activity. And the second half of the equation is seeing activity in silence. What does it mean? So, for example, when we are in deep relaxation, sometimes we go so deep in relaxation that we become lethargic. We can say we become couch potatoes. And I'm sure all of us have this experience, right? We want to relax, but if we relax too much, then we become lazy, lethargic. Tamoguna comes up in our experience. So when we see activity in silence, that means we are silent, we are in a place of meditation or deep relaxation, yet there is a flow. You can say we are in that flow state. Flow state. We are still able to see some movement in silence. So that is what prevents the mind from being stagnant or going into tamas. To remove that stagnant state of mind, always keep seeing this activity in silence. So seeing silence in activity and activity in silence. Both of these will help us to bring that balance between stable anchor and dynamic activity. So this abhyasa or this practice is an example of how we can blend the two, the pravritti marga and the nivritti marga. Okay. I'd like to highlight one more, the next, going to the next segment of the presentation. Bhagavad Gita gives very beautiful metaphors and analogies in the path of yoga. So some of the very subtle principles of yoga abhyasa, yoga sadhana, and the wisdom of yoga, Bhagavad Gita gives mental images or pictures, metaphors, analogies that make the point very clearly. And I'd like to give a couple of examples of these teachings. So let's look at the example of pratyahara. Pratyahara. So what is pratyahara? Pratyahara is one of the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga, which means the 8 parts or the 8 limbs of yoga, which is what makes the practice of yoga holistic. And Ashtanga Yoga is described beautifully in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. The practice of Pratyahara is the 5th of the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. The word Pratyahara itself is very interesting. Ahara means food. Ahara, whatever we consume, is ahara. In the context of yoga, ahara is not just what we eat and ingest into our system. Ahara also refers to what we let in through our senses. In other words, whatever we see, hear, taste, smell, or touch. So whatever we receive through our 5 senses is also called ahara. So the practice of pratyahara or pratyahara is similar to fasting. So for a few moments or for a few minutes in the practice of pratyahara, I am not going to consume anything through the 5 senses. I'm going to disengage the senses from the sense objects. So this practice is called pratyahara. And the definition that Maharishi Patanjali gives in the Yoga Sutras is Swavishaya asamprayoge chittasya swarupanukara iva indriyanam pratyaharaha. In other words, Swavishaya asamprayoge. The senses and their corresponding sense objects you sever or you disconnect the senses from the respective sense objects and allow the senses to repose in the chitta, in the mind. So, chittasya swarupa anukara ivendriyanam pratyaharaha. So, rather than the senses attaching themselves to the sense objects, allow the senses to repose in the chitta, in the mind. And if we practice pratyahara, then we are able to gain supreme mastery over our senses. That's what Maharishi Patanjali says. Tata paramavashyate indriyanam. So we are able to be the master of our senses rather than being a slave of our senses. So this is the practice of pratyahara as described in the Yoga Sutras. Now, Bhagavan Krishna gives a very beautiful metaphor to understand the practice of pratyahara. He gives the metaphor of a tortoise. This is from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Yada samharate chayam kurmonganiva sarvashaha indriyani indriyarthebhyaha tasya prajna pratisthita. Yada samharate chayam kurma, just like a tortoise. Kurmo angani iva sarvashaha. Just like the tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell when it wants to relax, when it wants to disconnect from the world, it withdraws its limbs into the shell. Like that, withdraw your senses from the sense objects and allow the senses to repose in the self. So this is a very beautiful picture, very beautiful analogy that Bhagavan Krishna gives to understand the practice of pratyahara. And as you see, it gives a nice visual, a nice picture. This is how I practice pratyahara. And let me give one more example. So the definition of dhyanam, meditation. So the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali defines dhyana or meditation in the following sutra. And it's very important because the word meditation is a very fuzzy word now. Different people have different understanding or different ideas of what meditation is. But here's the technical, the actual definition of meditation according to the Yoga Shastras. So this is Patanjali, Maharishi Patanjali's definition. He says, Tatra pratyaya ekatanata dhyanam. Dhyanam or meditation is defined as the pratyaya. Pratyaya is the mental scenery that we are entertaining in the mind in this moment. That is the pratyaya, the scene, the set of all chitta vrittis in this moment is called pratyaya. Ekatanata means it remains the same. It doesn't change. It remains the same from one moment to the next. So dhyanam is nothing but the state of mind that is so tranquil, so peaceful, that whatever scenery that is there in the mind, whatever object the mind is entertaining, whatever thoughts are there in the mind, they remain the same from one moment to the next. It doesn't change. It is like placing a flower on the surface of a lake. And if the surface of the lake is not agitated, if it is tranquil, then the flower remains in the same spot from one moment to the next. You see? So this is dhyanam. The mind is so tranquil that the same pratyaya, the same scenery persists across time. And Bhagavad Gita gives a very beautiful analogy to visualize what dhyanam is, what meditation is. And this is from the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The 6th chapter is called Dhyana Yoga, also called Atma Samyama Yoga. My teacher used to say that the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is a complete manual on meditation. So here Bhagavan Krishna explains the science and art of meditation, starting with how to prepare the body for meditation, how to prepare the seat for meditation, how to prepare our lifestyle for meditation. What should we eat? How much should we eat? Etc. And then when we sit for meditation, what do we do next? How to position the body and how to focus your eyes. And what do we do if the mind is agitated? If the mind doesn't settle down, if the mind is caught up with incessant flow of thoughts, what do we do? So the sixth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita explains all of this in great detail. So this is a complete manual on meditation. So in the sixth chapter, Bhagavan Krishna gives a very beautiful visual to understand the meditative state of mind. And the analogy that is given is Yatha Deepo Nivatasthaha Nengate Sopamasmrita Yogino Yata Chittasya Yunjato Yoga Matmanaha Yatha Deepaha Nivatastaha, just like a deepa, the flame of a candle. Nivatastha, vata means movement of air or the wind. Nivata means a windless place. So when the flame is situated in a windless place, it is not flickering. It is a stable, steady flame. And from one moment to the next, the flame is identical. In other words, there is pratyaya ekatanata that Patanjali spoke in the definition of meditation. The same scenery persists across time. And the flame, the light, also reflects the light of awareness. In the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali calls it Jyotishmati. Jyotishmati, the light of awareness that is reflected in the mind. Jyotishmati. So the Jyotishmati is not flickering. It is a stable light, stable flame. And Sri Krishna gives a very beautiful picture to behold this state of meditation, just like the flame in a windless place. That is how the chitta of the yogi is during meditation. So this is a beautiful analogy that we see in the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Now, each chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is described as a yoga. The title of each of the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita is a yoga. For example, the first chapter, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's sorrow. And then the second chapter is Samkhya Yoga, the yoga of Sankhya, and so forth. Each chapter is a title of a yoga or a discipline. Now, as you see, there are so many paths in yoga, and Sri Krishna says that there are many ways to get to the same destination. In the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he gives a very beautiful teaching. Dhyane natmani pashyanti kechidatmanam atmana anye sankhye yogena karma yogena chapare. Some people repose in the self. They achieve self-realization through dhyanam, through meditation. Others achieve the same thing by knowledge, by the path of Sankhya, knowledge. Samyak hyayate iti Sankhya, definition of Sankhya. It is the right understanding or correct perception to see the truth is Sankhya. So the cultivation of knowledge can bring about that same state of mind. While others attain that self-realization through karma yoga, through the path of action. So there are numerous ways to achieve that state of yoga. And therefore, we can describe different paths of yoga like bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, and so forth. And within each of these different paths, in the Bhagavad Gita, we find many disciplines. What are the specific things I need to do? If I call myself a karma yogi, what should I do? What are the practices I should do? If I'm engaged in bhakti yoga, what are the specific practices that will help me make progress in bhakti yoga? So let me give an example. So here is a set of 9 disciplines that are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita in Karma Yoga. So you can think of these as Karma Yoga Abhyasaha, the abhyasas or the practices that are given in Karma Yoga according to the Bhagavad Gita. So one of these practices we already saw before, namely the 6th practice, Abhyasa 6, Karmani Akarma Darshanam. That's what we saw earlier, where engaged in activity, we are also reposing in silence. We are connected with the space of silence even while engaged in dynamic activity. Karmani Akarma Darshanam. Let's look at perhaps one more of this example. So let's say the 4th one. Swakarmana tamabhyarcha siddhim vindati manavaha. Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, Swakarmana tamabhyarcha. Whatever actions that we do, whatever work that we are obligated to do, raise the quality of that work, make that work a spiritual practice, spiritual discipline by doing that work as a worship, as an archana. Swakarmana tam abhyarcha, like an offering to the divine. And one of my teachers, Swami Bodhanandaji, he crafted this new word, work as worship, workship, workship. So even small action or what we call mundane tasks, for example, washing dishes or folding clothes, it may appear mundane. Sometimes we do these actions mechanically. But Lord Krishna says, you can use that opportunity to elevate that action. Why just do it as a mundane activity? Perhaps even resisting, oh, I don't feel like doing it, but yet I have to do it. So with a lot of resistance, when we do it, we deplete a lot of energy. We feel exhausted. Instead, think of it as an offering. I'm doing this out of devotion, out of love. And I'm doing this as an offering to the divine. So we elevate that same task into that of a spiritual activity. In fact, the definition of the word puja, we are familiar with the word puja as a ritual or a worship, an act of worship. The true meaning of the word puja is Purnat Jayate iti puja. Purnat Jayate iti puja. In other words, that action that is born out of fullness. Purna means full. So Purnat Jayate, the heart is full of love and devotion. From that space of devotion, we are inspired to act. That action that is inspired from a place of devotion is called puja. So we can transform even the smallest of that, the mundane action, into that of a puja, worship. So this is one of the abhyasas that is given in the Karma Yoga in Bhagavad Gita. So during the Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita course that is starting in the next quarter, we will go deep into each of these abhyasas. And of course, this is just on the topic of Karma Yoga. So each session during the course, we will take up one theme. For example, one of the sessions will be on Karma and Karma Yoga, where we will also talk about the law of karma, etc. And the theme will be different each session. One week, the theme will be Bhakti Yoga. What are the similar abhyasas that are given in Bhakti Yoga? What about Sankhya? One of the themes that we will take up is Sankhya. What is Sankhya? What are the basic tenets of Sankhya philosophy? And so forth. So, and the first session, the very first session, the theme will be Dharma, because the very first word of the Bhagavad Gita is Dharma. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamakaha pandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. So the first word is Dharma. So we will seek to understand what is Dharma, what is Swadharma, and how can we be aligned with the inspiration that comes from within. How can we be aligned with who am I? So there is a alignment or a union or yoga between our actions and our identity. So we will explore this when we talk about dharma. So each session, the topic will be different. One session we will talk about the Ashtanga Yoga and how the practices of the the 8 limbs of yoga, we find them in Bhagavad Gita. Although in the Bhagavad Gita, we don't see the word Ashtanga or Ashtanga Yoga that is mentioned, but all the practices and the teachings of Ashtanga Yoga are contained in the Bhagavad Gita. Just like we saw the example of Pratyahara and this analogy of the tortoise that is given. And we will see, for example, what about asanas, how to position the body when we sit for meditations. Shuchau deshe pratisthapya sthiram asanam atmanaha natyuchritam natineecham chaila ajina kusha uttaram. So in the 6th chapter, we find this word asana, how to position the body and sit stably and comfortably for meditation. So like that, we will explore each of the practices within Ashtanga Yoga. So here is the plan for each week. So Dharma will be the theme for the first week, and then Sankhya, and then the 3 gunas. The 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is called Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. And we will explore in depth the 3 gunas, Sattva Guna, Rajas, and Tamas. And we will see how the different yoga practices manage the balance of the 3 gunas. For example, if the system is too tamasic, perhaps we are feeling lethargic during the day, then what can we do? What specific practices can we do to reduce tamoguna? What can we do to reduce rajoguna? If the system is experiencing too much rajas or restlessness or agitation or anger or rage, the English word rage and the Sanskrit word rajas, they come from the same root. So when, just like a forest fire, the mind is gripped with agitation or restlessness or anger, then how can we quiet down the rajas in the system? How can we allow sattva, clarity, and the brilliant state of mind to come up? We will explore all that in the 3 gunas. And then karma yoga, we will dedicate one full session for tapas. In the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there are 6 verses that Sri Krishna gives on the subject of tapas. What are the specific austerities or disciplines? What is the discipline that for the body, the discipline for the speech, and discipline for the mind, and so forth? And then we'll explore the Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. We'll explore some mantras in the Gita. Om Tat Sat. Again, this is from the 17th chapter. And then we will talk about Nyasa, Vinyasa, Sannyasa. And for example, the word Vinyasa is very popular in the yoga world. Many yoga studios offer Vinyasa Yoga. What does Vinyasa mean? What does Nyasa mean? That's the root word, Nyasa. And we'll explore all this. And so the first session of the course starts on January 11th, Saturday. And we have totally 11 sessions during the course. And if you are interested and to embark on this study, wisdom, and the practice of yoga of the Bhagavad Gita, we would love to have you with us during the course. So I'd like to conclude the presentation with the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita. This is the last shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, which is spoken by Sanjaya. So Sanjaya speaks these words to Dhritarashtra. And this verse has been chosen by the scholars as the Eka Shloki. Eka Shloki means the one shloka of the Bhagavad Gita that captures the heart of the teachings, that captures the essence of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And it is interesting that Sanjaya encapsulates the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita into this one verse. And let me chant the verse. Sanjaya Uvacha Yatra Yogeshwara Krishnaha Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha Tatra Shrir Vijayo Bhutihi Dhruvani Tirmatirmama. So Sanjaya says, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishnaha, wherever there is Krishna in the form of Yogeshwara, Yogeshwara Krishna. That means Krishna as a yogi. In fact, Krishna says in one of the verses in the 10th chapter, Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhuta Shayastitaha. I reside in the heart of all beings. So, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, wherever there is Yogeshwara Krishna, can also be interpreted as whenever we are situated in the self, whenever we don't forget ourselves, when there is self-realization, we are in touch with the divine, the divinity within. And wherever there is Partha, Arjuna, who is ready for action, Dhanurdaraha. Dhanurdaraha means the holder of the bow. Arjuna ready to be in action with a bow in his hand. So wherever there is Krishna, Yogeshwara Krishna, and wherever there is Partha, Dhanurtaraha, there in that place, there is Shrihi, Vijayaha, Bhutihi, Dhruva, Nitihi, Matihi, Mama. So Sanjaya says, in such a place where both Yogeshwara Krishna is there and Arjuna who is ready for action, in such a place, there is prosperity, there is victory, there is orderliness, and all good things happen in such a place. In other words, whenever we are connected to the self and whenever we are ready for inspired action. So, in such a place, we are bound to be victorious. We are bound to experience prosperity and bound to experience orderliness and so forth. So, with this, allow me to conclude this presentation. I'd like to thank each one of you for your enthusiastic listening. So let me stop the slide share and hand over to Ankurji.
Always amazing. And you've taught this course many times and you've iterated, gotten better. The presentation, the way that you outlined, amazing. People are saying it in the chat. Excellent presentation. Thanks. Very interesting information shared. We have a few questions. We'll get into those shortly. Dr. Nageshi, there are no prerequisites. This is one of those courses that is a great entry point into Hindu University of America. Shriramji is a wonderful faculty. You saw in this one webinar how he started with nothing and got us all the way deep into it. And of course, over 11 weeks in the course, he does that as well. So there are no prerequisites, preparations, just, if you want to talk about that, Shriramji, a little bit, how this is in context of the certificate program in Hindu studies, where this fits in, what kind of preparation people should do for this course, and then maybe just more into requirements for the course. What are people expected to do and all that. And I've got the poll up. Please let us know if you're interested in taking the course. Just say yes, no, maybe. Yeah, Shriramji, please get us started and we'll take your questions in the Q&A box, please.
Yes, just to echo what Ankurji said, there are no prerequisites for the course. In fact, I would say the only prerequisite is if you feel inspired to learn more and embark on this journey, that means you are ready for the course. And we will also complement our study of the Bhagavad Gita with cross references to the Yoga Sutras and some of the Yoga Upanishads and some of the other yoga, perhaps Hatha Yoga Pradipika and so forth. That's what we did today, where we cross reference some of the sutras from Patanjali's Yoga Darshanam. So like that, we will explore different topics. Sanskrit is not a prerequisite. So each time we use a Sanskrit word, I'll make sure that we also translate, give the English meaning as well. And yes, so literally there is no prerequisite for this course.
Wonderful. And as a student in the course, you have a learning management system, week by week, the reading. How many hours outside of the course is expected, reading and assignments? And that's a question from Christy.
Yes, in fact, the course grading is based on the final submission. So on the week 11, we'll be asked to submit about 500-word essay about what we have learned during this 11 weeks. And in your own words, what are some of the salient nuggets of wisdom that we learned during the course? So writing an essay, in fact, it can be in any other form, not just in the written form. In the previous offerings of this course, we have had people even draw one. We had an artist who participated in the course, and they drew a very beautiful visual on a canvas, and that was their final submission. It was a very beautiful, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So in a pictorial form, they were able to articulate what they learned during the course. That is also welcome. We also had a participant who recorded. So they composed a poem and they recorded the poem in their own voice and submitted that recording. So that is also a way for the final submission. So on a weekly basis, there's an optional homework. So these weekly homework submissions, they don't count for the final grade, but it is just for the sake of assisting our learning process to identify three main points, at least three main points, which were like aha moments during that session. So three bullet points that are takeaway from that session and submit that as the homework submission. And that's an optional thing, but the final grade will be based on the final assignment.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's a great description. As other people were asking about the presentation, I was a little curious. Glad that you are flexible with all of that. It's very interesting.
As they say, yoga gives flexibility.
Yes, yes, yoga gives flexibility. Let me drop in the chat one more time. It's going to start January 11th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturdays, and then it's going to go until March 22nd. So every week on Saturday at was that 8 a.m. Pacific Time, but 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And it's a $300 course. We have some scholarships for Caribbean folks, Greater Bharat, Australia, New Zealand. So depending on your geography, we can have a scholarship or a different fee schedule. And as Shriramji said, outside of class it's up to you. So it's endless, right? You could spend hours and hours reading everything and diving deep, but expected what, 1 hour, 2 hours a week in addition to the 90 minutes of course. Something similar is usually what we aim for, right? 90 minutes, 90 minutes. Right, Shriramji? 90 minutes outside of course is usually good.
Yes, in fact, even investing 15 minutes will go a long way in assisting the learning process.
All right, so Vishnuji, if that was your holdup, then you should definitely enroll. Devji, the slide deck from this webinar will not be made public. What we will do is this recording will be shared. So you will have this recording on YouTube. Everyone who registered will get into it, will get access to it. We prefer people register, we get their contact information and then you get the recording. But if you have somebody that you think would be good, you can share this recording once you get it and encourage them to enroll. Anandji, this course is not to learn shlokas by heart. You may end up learning a few by heart because Shriramji focuses on them. But we have other courses where the goal and objective is to memorize certain scriptures in the complete, right? Complete scripture or particular shlokas. So this is not a memorize shlokas by heart. It's more about getting it into your heart and into your brain, right? And understanding and applying it. Yeah, we're kind of nearing the end. Jituji, very glad to have you on, Jituji. Is there a book that you would recommend that presents the interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita in this way? Are you working on a book right now, Shriramji?
No, we do have some optional references, and we send out a list of about 5 books before the start of the course. And they're all optional because each of the sessions, just like we did today with the slide presentation, all the slides during each session will be made available through the course portal through HUA. So the presentations will be available after each session. The books are optional. One book, for example, that we give as a suggested reading is authored by Swami Chidbhavananda. Chidbhavananda. He has a beautiful book on the translation and the short commentary of each verse of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's a very famous, and well referenced book by Swami Chidbhavananda.
Wonderful. We don't have any more pending questions. Last chance to get your question in. If you want a shout out, let us know where you're zooming in from, and we can. I'll give you a quick shout out. The poll is still up. Please fill out the poll. Let us know. Doctor, is that yes? Soumya Chidbhavananda. So that is the author. Okay. When can I get more information on certification? Dr. Nageshi will connect with you afterwards specifically. So we have a community education division. So this yoga of the Bhagavad Gita is one course that you can just take on its own, or it can fit into our certificate program in Hindu studies, which is many courses that builds a whole program so that you are that the aim is to develop Hindus who have clarity and confidence, not just one-off course here or there, but a holistic understanding of all these different aspects of Sanatana Dharma. So Dr. Nagesh will connect on the certification. We have several different certifications. I'm glad that you are interested in that. And you'll get email afterwards with the course details, the link. I already put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat one more time in case you want to pick it up. That link goes to the course, and you can register right there directly. So please do. And Priyaji is asking, when is the next session after January? So Shriramji teaches multiple courses at HUA. Somebody else mentioned that as well. The yoga of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, right? That's another course you teach. You teach several others. It's depending on some factors. Shriramji, why don't you share what your upcoming schedule is like and what you're thinking about teaching? And
Yes, so for the last 3 years, we have been alternating between two courses, Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita, and the quarter after that will be Yoga of the Yoga Sutras, where the spotlight of study will be Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And in the coming year, we also plan to introduce one more course, the Yoga of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is a classic text on the specific practice of Hatha Yoga and what is Hatha Yoga and so forth. So that will be offered perhaps summer or fall of 2025. But to answer a specific question, the Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita most likely will be offered once more later in 2025 as well.
wonderful. Yeah, so Priyaji, this recording will be shared with you if you registered. Was the title of the book by Swamiji given? What was the title of that book?
Oh, the title of the book is simply the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, Bhagavad Gita by Swami Chidbhavananda. So that's in there, Jituji. We'll follow up. I don't know if you see these long kind of paragraphs from Sky Devices. We appreciate it when you actually put your name and instead of taking anonymous. I'll just simplify. There's 2 points in here. There's this idea that what a master achieves can then be passed on to the masses just by association, by touching feet or touching forehead. And just because you're in the presence of somebody who's enlightened or attained samadhi, that you can also get it that way. What are your thoughts on that? How does that feel? I feel like that with you, actually. When I'm around you, you bring that calmness and that elevated understanding. What is your
In fact, in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there is a set of 18 verses which are called Sthita Prajna Lakshanas. Sthita Prajna Lakshanas, which means the qualities of someone who is of stable mind. In other words, qualities of an accomplished yogi. Now, this itself is a practice, an abhyasa that is given in the Bhagavad Gita, namely to look at those who have achieved or are in that state of yoga, who are always kind, who are always in that space of mental stability, who inspire you with their being calm and being happy, come what may, unconditionally loving, unconditionally happy, and so forth. So how do they behave in life? How do they conduct themselves? So when we observe them, we get inspired. So mere watching them, observing them, how they go about their life is a practice. In the Yoga Sutras also, Patanjali gives a similar practice. He says, Vitaraga Vishayam Va Chittam. Vitaraga Vishayam Va Chittam. So one of the practice is to keep observing somebody who is Vitaraga, who has gone beyond cravings and aversions, and who have achieved that state of yoga. So there is a statement in yoga that says, Siddhasya Lakshanani Sadhakasya Sadhanani Bhavati. Again, it says, Siddhasya Lakshanani Sadhakasya Sadhanani Bhavati. That means that which comes naturally for a siddha, for accomplished yogi, let that become the practice for a novice yoga practitioner. You see, for example, an adept yogi, they're always calm, they're always kind, they're always happy, cheerful, smiling, etc. And even if they get perturbed, they come back to center very quickly. They don't keep resentment for 25 years, and no, they come back to their center very quickly. So observe them, what comes naturally for them. They're naturally kind, they're naturally stable in mind. Let that become my practice. It is said that all the practices in yoga, where do they come from? It is coming from observing great yogis, or even beings in nature. For example, when we do the practice of downward dog, Adho Shvanasana in the yogasanas, we look at nature, we look at our pet, how they're always smiling, how they're always calm, how do they keep their body fit, and seeking inspiration from that, we practice that in our own body. So whatever comes naturally for a siddha, let that become the practice for a sadhaka.
Wonderful. Okay, if you haven't filled out the poll, let us know. It is always my pleasure to host these webinars. Christy, we will let you know when Shiramji is doing a webinar and you can study asanas with him in person. That is an exciting opportunity. Shiramji, you haven't been teaching any asana-focused courses.
It's been a while. And I think the last one was about a couple of years back, where we had a holistic yoga, where we had an hour of some foundations and theory, followed by an hour of actual yoga practice inside the yoga mat. Maybe we should plan one in the coming year as well.
Depends on your schedule, Shiramji. If you offer it, I'm sure people will take it. Yes, yes. Okay, with that, thank you everyone for attending and being here. Let me hand it to Shiramji to end the webinar.
Once again, thank you everyone, and thank you Ankurji for your enthusiasm and your smiling face and beautifully articulating the questions and so forth. And thank you all for your eagerness and enthusiasm. Namaste.
Dhanyawad.